Okay, I'm going to pump up Okay. Well, I spent most of the day outside, so there might be a few allergy related bullshit in this review. Anyway, so this is a review I'm going to do on a movie that I talked about earlier this week with a few friends in this little movie club that we've been doing. So, Pokemon I Choose You. This is definitely one of those movies where I kind of feel like it's kind of interesting because it's taking part of the Pokemon story that started the anime started 23 years ago. So it's taking parts of that story and then morphing it into essentially a reboot. And honestly, I'm not really sure. Well, for one thing, I think what this movie does, it does a good job at not falling into the trap that a lot of other of the Pokemon movies and the Yu-Gi-Oh movie and the Digimon movie kind of fell into this trap as well, and the Power Rangers movie where they're not really they're kind of dropping you the Power Ranger movies from the 90s. I mean, they're kind of just expecting people to already know the entire story behind these characters going into the movie, so they don't really explain much. So right off the bat, this movie does its best to kind of explain the world a little bit, so we have a bit of an understanding about how things work. And I actually do appreciate that because in the actual first movie, we only get an explanation about something mysterious, but we don't really understand the world because the movie was made for the fans and not for a general audience. This one is clearly still made for the fans, but it's trying to do it in a way where it can reach a general audience as well, so it can kind of get the best of both worlds. The initiated versus the uninitiated, I guess you could say. So the plot is basically the pilot and Ash going on this journey to figure out this rare Pokemon that he saw a vision of after he saves Pikachu from evil Spearows. So yeah, it's they mesh several versions of the show into this one movie. It's kind of interesting, really. But then again, I think what makes it work for me is that considering the fact that all these Pokemon do exist from the first generation and onward, it makes sense that for a reboot they would smash all iterations of those creatures together instead of just gradually revealing them as the series progressed. I think that's actually a smart move. And actually, I think I like the character of Ash in this. I like how he's portrayed in this one more than in the anime, but I kind of feel split on that because he is our spunky, optimistic protagonist. The problem I have is that while I do like the character, I do feel like he seems a little too competent for the movie because the part of the character in the anime, the part of the charm was that he didn't really know what he was doing initially, and he made a lot of dumb mistakes, and he had to learn from that and grow, and therefore we as the audience grow with him and learn more about the rules as Ash is working his way up. In this one, he already kind of seems to know what to do, and he's already jumping headfirst into danger to save the day like a friggin' action hero. And that just seems a little. I mean, I guess it kind of works because this is kind of a young kid's fantasy about being a hero. So it kind of fits from that perspective. It just seems a little weird that Ash is a rookie and somehow seems to know how to handle himself in a tough situation and then yet still have to learn. It's kind of inconsistent. Um, and I will say that the whole plot of trying to meet Oho, the bird thing that he saw in the beginning by getting a feather, it is kind of interesting how Ash they change a little bit of the characters he runs into. I will say this, I do like the actual antagonist or semi villain in the movie, being Cross, who was this rude guy who physically abused a Charmander, a fire Pokemon. Look, if you're watching this video and you don't know clearly what I'm talking about, look up Pokemon, and once you feel like you understand it very well, then come back and watch this movie because or review because I don't really have time to explain every little thing. Otherwise, I've already talked for like 5 minutes. If I try to explain everything I know about Pokemon, not only would this video be obscenely long, but you'd probably fall asleep and forget you're even watching. So anyway, so yeah, there is kind of that sense of Ash having a rival, and I do like how this character kind of clashes with Ash's more family friendly, nurturing, friendly, sympathetic approach. And that does lead to one problem with the movie is that, and here's my problem with Ash, because he's not really a flawed character in this version. So when he gets mad about losing for the first time, it seems a little weird that he's mad about losing because it sucks. I think it would have made more sense if they gone with the route that he was mad that he lost because he felt he had let his Pokey friend down for not getting the last laugh on the SOB that abandoned him. I thought that's what they were going for. It does provide a good lesson for the character, but it just kind of felt like it was a lesson that was just shoehorned in because development. Well, and it's not as lazy as some of the other stuff we do in the movie. Some of the emotional moments, for example, they really do work, but I feel like the problem with the emotional scenes is that the reason why they don't always hit is that the characters involved in the store in the scene, we don't really get much of a connection and how much it means to both characters, and we don't have time to get invested. Like when Ash has to say goodbye to his butterfly Pokemon, we don't really get to know their connection that well. So when they do say goodbye, it's not as heartfelt. It's like you feel bad because the characters feel bad, but if you're saying goodbye to someone you have only known for like a couple days, that's not that painful. But if you're saying goodbye to someone that you've known for years and they're saying goodbye to you and you have no way to stop it, that's more gut wrenching because that's a bigger part of your life gone, you know? And there are some other emotional moments in the film that do hit really good. And there is one where one of Ash's friends, the professorial guy of the group, is talking about how he had this Newfoundland dog esque creature save him from freezing to death, and the dog and the creature actually dies from being frozen. That was actually pretty dark. I was not expecting a G-rated movie to have frozen to death as a part of the script. Um, and there are some other emotional scenes that do hit because, again, there was good setup, enough investment, and a sweet payoff. And again, I think if the movie did that a little more, there would be a little more sympathetic, sentimental moments that would have actually flipped the switch on. Um, so another, so while the movie's inconsistent but good at the end of the day, the one element of this movie that I thought was done purely for fan service and adds nothing is the inclusion of the Team Rocket characters. In the original show, we have, well, okay, Jesse, James, and Meowth. They're pretty much the screw ups of the organization. They always get their asses handed to them. And the part that's frustrating is that they have several cameos throughout the movie, and all they're there for is to act arrogant and then get smacked out of the picture. The only difference is when they fall down a cliff and somehow survive, but they're kind of pointless. Like if you were watching the movie and like you were with your friends or something and you don't know much about the show, those three stooges are pretty much you'd kind of be sitting there thinking, okay, why are we focusing on these losers that keep getting knocked off into the horizon? Fan service. Although I do like how during the end credits you do see clips and cameos of some of the other characters that Ash got to meet across the various seasons of the show. That was a lot of fun to watch, and even the Brock and Misty stand-ins for this, they were good, and they were actually okay. The Misty stand-in, I think they could have developed her a little more and developed her strange relationship with her mom a little more than they did because they just kind of got the idea, and this is one of the biggest problems that I see with a lot of lazy writing is that they feel like if they just say, "Oh, I have a problem with my mom," They somehow think that's some sort of arc you get invested in. No, mentioning something in a line of dialogue doesn't get us invested. Dedicating time and energy to that story thread is what gets us involved. But overall, I think this movie is endearing. And while it doesn't always succeed, you can tell it's trying to have a heart and soul. And it is kind of fun to watch this movie. It was fun for me to watch because ignoring Detective Pikachu, I haven't really watched the anime since 2006. So it was kind of fun for me to watch the movie. The trailer for this was really good, and I think it got released in theaters 3 years ago as some sort of special event. So it was a lot of fun to watch this. I will admit some of the happy cheesy moments were a little cringy, and as I said before, this is a heavily flawed film. But overall, I do think it's something that you can get a lot of enjoyment out of, regardless of whether or not you're a Pokemon fan. Although I do think Pokemon fans will get a little more enjoyment out of it as opposed to someone who would wear the lipstick V on their forehead at a Rocky Horror event. So, next week I will be starting a Star Wars marathon in which I plan on reviewing all the Star Wars movies, and I'll make a post about that on Twitter this upcoming week. But I will do my guitar cover on Monday, and until then, I'll see you guys around. Bye.